Welcome, wanderer, to the cold, briny world you've likely ignored in all your Viking daydreams. While the sagas brag about sword-swinging, monastery-pillaging men with wind-tossed hair and questionable hygiene, no one spares a verse for the true warriors of the fjord, the fisherwomen. You are a Viking. Fisherwoman, congratulations. Your life is not glorious. It is wet, cold, fish-scented, and somehow still harder than anything your axe-wielding cousin has ever done in his raiding career. It's morning, allegedly. You don't have a rooster. You don't have a clock. What you do have is the sound of a baby coughing, your joints screaming, and the delightful aroma of dried fish. Breath in your face from your husband who rolled over sometime during the night and decided your ear made a fine mouthguard. You peel open one eye and find darkness. The sun isn't up yet, but neither are you, because it never went down inside your damp, drafty longhouse. Welcome to dawn in the Viking Age. Technically optional, but also not, because no one's going to catch the fish if you don't. Your bed. A mattress made of straw, fleas, and regret. Your pillow. A family dog who has long given up trying to escape your snoring toddler and now lies defeated across your shins. You sit up slowly, every bone clicking in a language only ravens understand. The fire's gone out again. Of course it has. The man who promised to keep it going through the night has achieved nothing except expanding his snore repertoire. You sigh, scratch something unmentionable, and prepare for a day of doing everything while hearing stories about men doing great deeds at sea. Step 1. Relight the fire. There is no flint in your hands, no matches, no modern You, 2 frozen fingers, a small pile of twigs, and the burning knowledge that the whole family will starve and freeze if you don't make magic happen before breakfast. You kneel beside the pit, poke the reluctant embers like they owe you silver, and coax a flame with all the patience of a saint and the mouth of a sailor. Finally, smoke curls up. The flame flares alive, and with it, your desire to strangle anyone. Whoever said women had it easy? By now, the children have begun to stir. 3 of them. One is chewing on the bedpost. Another is wrapped around the dog, like an octopus with no sense of boundaries. The third is already outside, half naked, trying to see if he can slide across frozen seaweed without breaking his face. The youngest toddles up to you, points to his mouth, and says hungry, as though you didn't just work a full shift breathing life back into the fire. You pat his head, and reply with a grunt that translates roughly to, "Go chew on your foot, I'm busy." Next up, your husband stirs. The mighty seafarer who promised to patch the net yesterday, fix the boat last week, and teach the children to gut fish a month ago. He rolls over, scratches something below deck, and mumbles about how his rowing muscles are sore. You glance at your own calloused hands, blistered fingers, and the dull ache in your shoulders from hauling nets, buckets, and children. Sore muscles. Adorable. You grab your woolen wrap, tie it around your waist, and prepare to do the work of 3 people while listening to your mate complain about wind direction. Breakfast. A delightful meal of dried fish flakes and boiled barley, assuming the rats didn't get to it first. You check the clay storage pot. Success. Only 1 rat corpse this time. You toss it to the dog, scrape out the barley, and stir it into an unappetizing gray mush. The children inhale it like wolves at a midsummer feast, and you scavenge the corners for the least gritty bites. The youngest spits a fishbone back into the bowl. You shrug and keep eating. Waste not, want not. Theirs. No time for pleasantries. No chance for a second cup of anything. The sea waits, and unlike your husband, the sea doesn't tolerate excuses. You grab your fishing basket woven by your own hands, patched too many times to count and gather your tools. No fancy rods, no convenient reels. Just a hand-woven net, a crude spear, and a small wooden canoe that has more leaks than dignity. You sling your basket over your back, hoist the net across one shoulder, and march toward the rocky shore like the patron saint of soggy survival. The beach greets you with its usual charm wind that bites through wool, water that promises frostbite, and a collection of dead seaweed, broken shells, and some creature's half-eaten carcass that your youngest will definitely try to poke later. You drag the canoe down to the edge of the water, shoving aside stray driftwood and muttering curses that would make Odin blush. Fishing, you see, is not some poetic pastime in your world. It's not sitting lazily under the sun with a line in the water and a song in your heart. It's squatting in freezing spray with numb fingers, untangling a net that your husband promised was good as new, knowing full well it's held together by fraying rope and your personal willpower. Your first attempt is optimistic. You push out into the gray waves, muscles burning, arms flexing against the current. The net splashes out into the water, a labor of experience and stubbornness. You wait, your toes go numb, your back stiffens, your jaw clenches as the wind laughs in your face. Finally, you haul in the net, the grand catch of the morning, to wriggling herring, a crab the size of a thumbnail, and something slimy that may or may not be alive. You stare at it, it stares back. You toss it back to the sea and pretend you didn't almost scream. More rows, more throws, more hauls. Your fingers bleed, your nose runs, and your basket remains tragically empty. You sigh, adjust your grip, and keep rowing because complaining doesn't put fish in the pot. By mid-morning, you've gathered enough to avoid starvation barely. A few cod, some decent-sized flatfish, and a collection of mollusks that are edible if you pretend they're not alive. You steer the canoe back to shore, hauling the dripping net with the grace of a sleep-deprived walrus. Your arms are shaking, your hair is sticking to your face, and you smell like old seaweed. You wouldn't trade this for anything because, at least out here, no one's asking you to sew winter cloaks or fix a broken chicken pen. Back at the longhouse, your glorious return is met with complete indifference. The children are fighting over a stick. The dog has stolen half the barley mush. Your husband looks up from his whittling project and says, "Not much today, huh?" You smile sweetly and mentally plan his untimely demise. Instead, you dump the fish onto the wooden slab that passes as a counter and get to work. Cleaning fish is a skill passed down through generations of women who did not get enough credit. You slice gut and scale with precision that would make a surgeon jealous. The entrails go to the dog, the scraps go into the stew pot. The eyes you save for the pickling jar, because every part must be used. And you never know when you'll need emergency rations. By the end of it, your hands are a masterpiece of fish, slime, and salt crust. You wipe them on your apron, glance at the pile, and feel a flicker of satisfaction. Lunchtime arrives, bringing with it the chaos of children demanding food, a husband conveniently vanishing to check the roof, and the reality of yet another meal of stew that tastes like the inside of an old boot. You ladle out portions, ignore the complaints, and shove your own portion down before someone asks you to fix something else. You're not eating for enjoyment. You're eating for survival. You finally sit by the hearth, exhaling for the first time since dawn, cradling a bowl of dubious fish stew. The room smells of smoke, fish, sweat, and faint despair. You gaze at the flames and realize you've lived through another morning. Another small victory in a life that history forgot to glamorize you, the fisherwoman, keeper of nets, conqueror of waves, master of survival in a world that pretends you don't exist. And as you sip your thin stew and stare at the bundle of nets you still need to repair before nightfall, you smile, because tomorrow the sea will call again, and you, armed with nothing but stubbornness and a really sharp knife, will answer. Afternoon arrives not with peace, but with purpose. You, a Viking fisherwoman, have survived the morning effete. Few appreciate and now step boldly into that delightful stretch of the day where exhaustion meets responsibility. There is no nap time, there is no break. There is only you, your to-do list, the length of a long ship, and the knowledge that if you don't keep moving, something will either starve, fall apart, or catch on fire. Possibly all three. First order of business, the nets. Your loyal, miserable collection of rope, seaweed, and patches thicker than the original weave. You drag them out into the daylight, spreading them over uneven rocks, inspecting every knot like a general surveying a battered army. Salt has chewed through half the lines. Crab claws have worked their sabotage on the corners. The part your husband swore was perfectly fine looks like it's been personally attacked by Thor. Himself you don't complain, complaining wastes. Daylight. You grab your bone needle, your length of coarse thread spun from sheep gut, and begin the mending ritual. It is an art form, a meditation, a battle of patience versus fraying fibers. Your fingers, raw from the morning's fishing, ache with every pull. Your back protests with every hunch. The wind tangles your hair in your face, adding insult to injury. Still, you stitch, pull, tie, and mutter low, vicious promises to any child who thinks now is a good time to demand attention. Inevitably, one of them does. The middle child, the one with a talent for mayhem, scuttles up with a fistful of something squirming. You glance down to find a half-dead eel and a grin so wide it could split a glacier. "For you, mother," he says proudly. Oblivious to the slimy streak now decorating your best-meaning least ragged woolen tunic. You accept the gift, because rejecting it will cause tears. Accept that you will smell like eel for days, and direct him to go find more, preferably far, far away. Once the nets are passable, not perfect, just less terribly, you haul them back into the storage nook by the door. You glance at the sky. Clouds roll in, gray and heavy, threatening rain. Rain means more mud, more damp clothes, and more smoke inside the longhouse when the fire sulks under wet logs. You grab an armful of kindling, march it back inside, and reload the hearth like the champion of domestic survival you are. And there's no glory in the hearth, either. You squat beside the stubborn fire, coax it back to life between flint strikes, lungfuls of smoke, and the occasional child yelling about someone stealing their fishbone toy. You ignore the chaos, shield the newborn flames with your own body, and remind yourself that at least you're not out on a freezing longship, getting seasick. That's something, isn't it? When the fire finally catches properly, you turn to the next item on the endless list. Dinner preparation. Yes, already. Because in your world, you either prepare early, or prepare to explain to 3 starving goblins, and 1 oblivious husband, why there's no food. You opt for survival. Again, you reach for your stored catch. The cod from this morning is quickly beheaded and gutted, the offcuts thrown into a bubbling iron pot for fish soup. You scale, slice, and lay fillets on flat stones by the fire, ready to smoke for winter stores. You scrape barnacles off mussels and mutter prayers to Nenyard, hoping none of them are secretly poisonous. You grab the last of the dried seaweed, soak it to make it chewable again, and already hear the complaints forming in the children's throats. Too bad, they'll eat seaweed or air, their choice. Outside, your oldest stomps in, dripping from head to toe, smelling like brine and mischief. He proudly presents a netted crab the size of your palm, looking smug enough to sail a raiding party himself. You praise him, but quickly assess if it's alive enough to cook, but dead enough not to escape. It tries to bite you. Of course it does. You dispatch it with 1 practiced whack against the chopping block. Dump it into the stew, and instruct the boy to dry himself before he floods the entire longhouse. You turn back to the hearth, stirring the soup, poking the drying fish, keeping half an eye on the door where the toddler is now attempting to ride the dog like a miniature reindeer. You debate intervening. The dog looks resigned. You let it happen. 1 less child underfoot while you cook. The light outside fades earlier than expected. Clouds thicken, wind howls through the gaps in the wooden walls, and you brace for a wet, stormy evening. Your husband returns from whatever terribly important task he invented to avoid housework. Patching the fence, checking the traps, defending the goats from invisible enemies. He stomps snow and dirt into your freshly swept floor, drops a brace of scrawny rabbits near the hearth, and announces, "Not much luck today." You resist the urge to beat him with the stirring stick. Instead, you silently add rabbit to the soup and mentally mark tomorrow's to-do list with check traps yourself. Dinner is, miraculously, edible. Between fish soup, roasted flatfish, and salted seaweed, no one keels over from hunger. The dog gets scraps. The children complain, eat everything anyway, and then pretend to be starving again. You scoop the last bits of soup into your bowl, tasting mostly salt and obligation, and chew through it while staring into the hearth flames. The men gather near the fire, talking of sails and axes, bragging about things they'll never actually do, ignoring the fact they can't even fix a leaky roof. You listen with half an ear, making mental notes of whose stories grew the most since yesterday. 3 men supposedly fought a bear last week. Today it's 5 men and 2 bears. Tomorrow, it'll be a whole village of bears, armed with clubs. You don't bother calling them out. You have work to do, after dinner. You heard the children through their nightly rituals scrape mud off their faces, pull bits of shell from their hair, make them chew on birch bark to pretend at dental care. The youngest protests until you bribe him with a fisheye, parenting Viking style. You wrap them in furs, lay them in the corner nearest the fire, and ignore the rustling that means someone definitely smuggled a live crab into the bedding. You'll deal with it in the morning. You clean up, scrape the worst of the grease off the bowls, and store what little is left of the stew in a clay pot, hanging it from a beam where the dog can't reach it but the rats absolutely will try. You shake out your sleeping furs. Check the door is barred against the windand, the neighbor's opportunistic goat sand. Finally, you sit. Evening. The time when your body aches, enough to consider simply keeling over. But your brain remains, too alert from responsibility to rest. You share a final cup of thin ale with your husband, ignoring his tall tales about ships he's never boarded and gold he's never seen. You stare into the fire, listening to the crackle, the storm raging outside, the occasional screech from a child dreaming of something ridiculous, and you breathe. You, the fisherwoman, not celebrated in the sagas, not sung about by skalds, but the living heartbeat of the village, the quiet hands who feeds the mouths, patches the nets, battles the sea, and holds the chaos together with threadbare rope and indomitable will. You are the reason the family survives, the reason the tribe eats, the reason life continues through another bitter season, tomorrow. Before the men wake, before the wind calms, before the waves ease, you will rise again. Fingers raw, back bent, heart steady, and you will go to war with the sea. Because you are a Viking fisherwoman, forgotten by history, but undefeated by life. Night never really comes in the Viking world. Not the peaceful, silent kind you imagine in your soft, modern bed. No, your night is just an extension of survival, colder, darker, and somehow louder, despite everyone pretending to be asleep. You, the fisherwoman, stretch out on a straw mattress pressed against the earth, wrapped in furs that smell like wet dog and campfire. Surrounded by the chorus of life you work endlessly to support. Across the longhouse, someone is snoring like a dying walrus, your husband, of course. A child coughs, the fire crackles, and you hear something suspiciously rodent-sized scuttle near the grain sack you already tied up 3 times. Welcome to Viking bedtime, restful, in theory, exhausting in practice. You tuck your hands under your arms, muscles throbbing from a day of rowing, mending, gutting, and herding chaos. You close your eyes and pray for at least a few hours of uninterrupted sleep before the next round of responsibility slaps you awake. Your prayers are wasted. They always are. Before dawn breaks, the storm finds its way into your dreams first. A low, steady howl, growing sharper as the wind snakes through the cracks in your walls. Rattling loose boards and howling like an angry sea spirit, your eyes snap open. Every bone complains as you sit up, joints stiff from damp and cold. The fire has sunk into a sulky bed of embers, too low to fend off the creeping chill that curls around your ankles and slides under your tunic. It's too early, you should rest more. But the world outside the longhouse doesn't care. The storm means one thing. Your fish will rot in the storage hut if you don't secure it. You swing your legs over the side of the mattress and step onto the packed earth floor, flinching as it bites back with icy teeth. Everyone else remains asleep, dreaming of grand feasts and meaningless heroism. You are awake, wide-eyed, and already calculating your next battle against nature. Outside, the wind roars in greeting. The clouds hang low and swollen, spitting rain sideways as you trudge toward the wooden storehouse by the shore. Your hair whips into your eyes, and your fingers go numb before you even reach the first latch. The woven fish baskets inside sway ominously on their hooks. You curse under your breath, half the roof's loose. A Gandon set to work, lashing everything down, shifting heavy sacks, weighing them with stones and hope. By the time you return to the longhouse, drenched in raw daylight has crept across the horizon, illuminating the gray world in its cold embrace. Your stomach grumbles, but you have no time for food. You stomp the water from your boots, wring out your hair, and stir the fire back into life before the children start their morning, squawking. Your life is built around this rising before everyone, securing the survival of people too oblivious to thank you. Mastering storms with nothing but strength, and stubbornness. The day begins in earnest with the arrival of the eldest, child mud up to his knees, hair pointing in every direction except down, and holding a dead gull like it's a trophy. He beams. You frown. It was sick, he offers by way of explanation. You sigh, take the bird, and mentally calculate how to salvage the meat before it starts to rot. You'll pluck it later, boil it twice, and pray it doesn't kill anyone. Breakfast, in true Viking style, is efficiency over enjoyment. Yesterday's fish soup reheated with questionable roots tossed in for texture, a side of barley flatbread harder than your husband's skull, and no time to sit while you shovel it into your mouth. Between bites, you separate squabbling children. Send the middle one off to collect firewood, and instruct the youngest to chase chickens back into their pen before they drown themselves in puddles. Your husband lumbers into the scene, all sleepy eyes and dramatic yawns. Bad storm, he observes, like you didn't already fight it at dawn. He mentions needing to repair the boat before tomorrow's fishing, and you offer him a dry nod, knowing full well you'll be patching the sail while he supervises. You gather your basket, inspect the traps you crafted last winter, and prepare for another foraging run, because the fish will not be enough. You venture out, shoulders squared against the wind, fingers grasping the rough handle of your basket. The world greets you with wet moss, thick mud, and the distant crash of waves hungry for the shore. You skirt around the worst of the bogs, plucking watercress, digging up roots with a sharpened stick, snatching berries from thorny bushes. Every plant is scrutinized, every mushroom turned over with suspicion, because experience taught you nature feeds you in one breath and poisons you in the next. On the way back, you check the coastal trapstone enclosures you and your neighbor secretly crafted in the shallows. The sea hasn't been generous. A few flapping mackerel, one furious crab, and a half-eaten lump of something you immediately toss back to the sea. Not great, but not failure either. You make your way home, basket sagging but respectable, legs sore but determined. Midday, and the longhouse is alive with noise. Children dart between the animal pens. Your husband is now fixing the oar by leaning on it and telling your brother-in-law tall tales. And you, soaked to the bone, gut the morning catch and prep the afternoon stew. You clean the gull with quick, precise cuts, discarding the diseased parts, boiling the usable bits, and adding extra salt because no one here survives without your vigilance. You dry the salvaged herbs by the fire, rotate the fish hanging from the smoke beams, and take a moment, just a heartbeat by the hearth, to stretch your tired spine before someone inevitably calls your name, and predictably, they do. The youngest has fallen into the creek. The oldest has stabbed his own foot while playing warrior. Your husband needs your help moving a log, because apparently his muscles only function during raids. You sigh, tuck the knife into your belt, and step back into the storm of your life. Fixing, hauling, healing, organizing, and anchoring a household too busy glorifying battle to recognize the constant war you fight for their survival. Afternoon drags on with the rhythm of endless tasks. You patch the roof with tar and scrap, shovel out the animal droppings before they ferment into a choking stench, reinforce the food storage pits, and carve fresh hooks for fishing lines because your mate lost the last batch. You churn milk from the neighbor's cow you bartered for, crush herbs for the winter remedies, and prepare the drying racks for more fish that must be smoked before the next storm ruins your stores. By evening, the wind slows but the drizzle lingers, soaking into your bones and clinging to your spirit. You gather the family for the evening meal, ladling out thick fish stew, breaking stale bread, handing out portions without ceremony. They eat, they complain about the toughness, they joke about how much better it'll taste when the men go raiding and bring back real meat. You smile, knowing they'll starve without you, but letting them have their illusions because you are too tired to correct them. As darkness settles, the men's stories grow louder, the fire burns low, and the children, sated and filthy, pile into the furs. You make the rounds, checking every latch, reinforcing every closure against the wind, wrapping your calloused fingers around the clay cup of lukewarm ale, and breathing deeply in the smoky warmth of your longhouse. You are not part of their sagas. Your name won't be carved into runestones, but your strength runs deeper than any warship's keel. You are the reason the family endures, the reason the children grow, the reason the tribe continues breathing through brutal seasons and fickle seas. Tomorrow, you will rise before the first crow squawks. You will patch, haul, cook, gather, and command without applause or glory. You will conquer waves without oars, feed mouths without praise, and build life in the harshest corners of the world, because you are a Viking fisherwoman, invisible in legend, invincible in life. The fourth dawn rises gray and damp, like every other day that promises more work than daylight. You, the Viking fisherwoman, wake before the first rooster stirs, before the smoke from the fire warms the rafters, before your husband even shifts beneath his half-damp furs. Your eyes snap open, already aware that your day is waiting, not politely, but with a sneer. A long list of chores sharpened like knives, and no intention of giving you even a moment's softness. Your knees creak as you push off the rough bedding. Your muscles pull like strained ropes, but you stand because there is no option not to. The hearth glows weakly, more ash than flame. The children are collapsed in a heap of limbs and straw, breathing through snotty noses and muttering in their sleep about the grand feasts that don't exist. Your husband emits the same sounds as a walrus trying to sing, blissfully unaware of the world already calling your name. You pull your tunic over your shoulders, the coarse wool scratching against skin, already raw from wind, salt, and labor. There is no mirror to tell you your hair is a nest, and your face a battlefield of exhaustion. You don't need one, you know. You always know. The first task, water. The storm from yesterday has left the barrels brimming but murky. You grab the clay jugs, one balanced on each hip, and trudge through the half-frozen mud to the stream. Your boots sink, your calves burn, but you keep walking because there is no magic solution. No one else will bring the water, no one else will boil it, and no one else will stop your children from drinking sickness straight from the puddles if you don't intervene at the stream. The world is quiet, save for the rushing current and the groaning wind. You fill the jugs, kneel to scrub your hands, and catch sight of your reflection in the water's surface. Hollowed cheeks, wind-chapped lips, eyes shadowed but fierce. You, the warrior, no scowls, will sing about, fighting battles too boring for legends but too brutal for rest. You lift the jugs, adjust your spine against the weight, and head back up the slope. By the time you return, the house stirs. Children tumble from their furs in various states of wildness, hungry and squabbling before their eyes are fully open. You dump the fresh water into the big pot over the fire, drop in a few herbs for flavor and safety, and set the oldest to work, stirring it while you start the morning meal. Fish, again, salted, scraped, and boiled into a stew that tastes like salt and stubbornness. A hunk of old bread, softened with broth, a few bitter greens, slapped onto plates made from old driftwood. The youngest protests, the middle one sulks, but everyone eats, because no one argues with hunger. Your husband lumbers to the hearth, swipes 2 portions before you sit, and regales the room with his plans of patching boats, checking traps, and probably not doing half of it. You eat standing, shoveling food between shouts at the children, kicks to the dog to stop it from stealing scraps, and mental calculations about how much smoked fish you have left in the storeroom. Not enough, never enough. Winter creeps closer. The sea gets meaner, and it's always you plugging the leaks before the ship of life sinks. After breakfast, the longhouse erupts into movement. The husband shoulders his axe and heads for the shore. The children scatter toward chores or mischief. You gather your basket, a net repaired in the fading candlelight last night, and a sharp stick because the woods care little for your intentions. You go foraging because fish isn't enough. You go because your people don't understand seasons, and if you don't stock the winter larder, you'll be gnawing on wood by February. You trudge across fields where frost still clings to the grass, eyes sharp for mushrooms, roots, and greens that haven't yet been claimed by frost. You dig with your bare hands, curse at stubborn tubers, and slice away at thistles that bite back. You win because you have to. In the woods, you set snares, check the ones you tied days ago, and pull out a single rabbit, scrawny but edible. You thank the land in muttered breath, stuff it into your basket, and head toward the shallows to check the fish traps. The tide is pulling back, the air thick with brine and rot, but in the woven rock crevices you find mackerel, some small eels, and something unidentifiable, but edible if cooked long enough. Survival doesn't care about flavor. You take everything. Back home, the sun is barely at its peak, and your back already screams in protest. You don't listen. You gut the rabbit, peel the skin, hang it near the hearth for drying. The fish are scaled, filleted, laid out for smoking, while you stir the afternoon stew with your foot. One eye on the door, where children dart past with muddy boots and 0 cents. Lunch is fast and flavorless. More stew, more fish, another round of complaints you ignore. You eat leaning against the doorframe, watching the sky shift from blue to dull gray, calculating how much daylight you have before the evening storm threatens again. The roof needs patching, the firewood needs stacking, the line of fish needs rotating, and the youngest just announced the dog ate one of the drying rabbits. You sigh, grab your stick, and prepare to chase both child and dog across the compound. Afternoon tumbles, forward in a mess of chores and scolding. You fix the fence with driftwood and muscle. You climb onto the thatch to shove sod back in place. You haul water for the evening meal, gather seaweed for the goats, and mend a split basket while crouching by the fire. Your husband returns, smelling of sea and defeat, with only a single sad flounder to his name. And you swallow your frustration because yelling fixes nothing, and your throat is too dry from cursing the wind. Dinner is thin stew, stretched thinner. The youngest cries about hunger. The oldest claims he'll starve. You remind them of the feast waiting in Valhalla, and they sulk through their chewing. Afterward, you scrape the bowls clean with fingers, shoo the animals back into their pens, and gather everyone around the hearth. Evening settles, pressing heavy over the house. The men talk big while their stomachs remain small. The children collapse in piles of furs, too tired to bicker, but not too tired to kick each other in their sleep. You secure the door, bar the shutters, and sigh into the quiet crackle of the fire. Your body aches like stretched rope. Your hands are blistered and cut. Your hair is a nest of salt and wind. But your house is fed. The traps are set. The storeroom is not empty. The fire is strong. Tomorrow will repeat itself, nets and waves, wind and cold, foraging and fixing, cooking and commanding. Tomorrow, your people will praise the sea gods for their survival without noticing the woman who truly delivered it. But tonight, you sit, warrior in wool, mistress of mud, queen of quiet victories. Your glory is not sung in mead halls. Your battles are not etched in stone. But your people live, your children grow, and your hearth burns because you, the Viking fisherwoman, rise when others rest, endure when others falter, and fight when others complain. You are the spine of survival, the breath of your household, the quiet storm that keeps the sea at bay. Tomorrow, you rise again. Morning returns like a thief, slipping through the smoke-stained rafters, tugging at your eyelids before your body is ready. You, the Viking fisherwoman, wake not because you choose to, but because the world refuses to wait. There is no luxury. In your bed of straw and animal skins, only the pressing weight of duty. The longhouse breathes around you, damp, musky, loud. Every crack in the wood, every rustle in the dark is a reminder that the sea calls, the land expects. And your family depends on the quiet strength you've built muscle by muscle. Scar by scar, your body reminds you of yesterday's hoarse shoulders, from hauling nets, cracked hands from gutting fish, calves tight from trudging through marshes. You swing your legs off the bedding, your toes kissing the cold-packed earth, and stretch. Bones crackle like firewood. There's no time to indulge. The hearth is nothing but cooled embers. The air is sharp, biting at exposed skin, and the longhouse is still, except for your husband's familiar snore sound that manages to be both irritating and oddly reassuring. The children are buried beneath wool and furs, limp and blissfully unaware of the day's demands. but you feel it all, every responsibility perched on your shoulders. Before the sky even shifts from charcoal to gray, you crouch at the hearth, breathing life into the coals, blowing, coaxing, adding dried grass and careful bits of kindling until the fire grudgingly crackles back to life. The smoke curls around your face, stinging your tired eyes, but you keep working, keep moving. Survival waits for no one, least of all for the one who keeps it stitched together. The first light filters through the slats, pale and weak. Outside, gulls squawk on the wind, a reminder that the shore beckons. The storms have quieted, but left behind a world sodden and heavy. You wrap yourself in your thickest wool cloak, pull on worn boots, hardened by salt and mud, and step out into the raw morning. Your breath puffs like smoke against the chill. The world stretches before you, gray sea to the east, frost-laced fields to the west, and the tangled line of dark woods beyond. You head toward the shore first, where traps might hold the difference between a day of full bellies or empty plates. Each step is work, your boots sinking into damp sand, your body fighting the morning stiffness at the water's edge. The traps sit half submerged, their outlines promising but unpredictable. You wade in without hesitation, cold water climbing up your calves, numbing your skin in moments. Your fingers, already cracked from salt and wind, work the knots, pull up the creaking baskets, and spill their contents into the waiting net. Small fish, a few crabs, a stubborn eel that whips in protest. Enough for a meal, barely. You reset the traps with methodical care, muscles working on habit, and turn inland. The woods are neck silent but watchful, their naked branches scratching at the gray sky. Your basket swings at your side, empty but eager. You pick your way through the undergrowth, plucking what nature grudgingly offers. Late berries clinging to thorny bushes, knotted roots hiding beneath stubborn earth, wild greens braving the season's chill. You walk further than usual, driven by the gnawing in your gut and the knowledge that the storeroom's shelves grow barer by the week. You test mushrooms with cautious fingers, sniff leaves with practiced care, listening to the whispers of memory that tell you what heals and what harms. The journey home is heavier, basket full, shoulders aching. You pass by the stream and rinse the worst of the dirt from your hands, knowing you'll be covered in it again before midday. The sky remains thick with clouds, no sun to chase away the lingering cold dot. Back in the longhouse, the children stir. The youngest cries from hunger. The oldest grumbles about chores. Your husband grunts, claiming he'll fish later, though you suspect it'll be you who ends up with the oar in hand. You lay out the morning's harvest, separate the fish for smoking and the fresh ones for stew, and throw the rest into the cookpot with roots and greens. Breakfast is loud slurping, grumbling, the occasional complaint about the toughness of the bread or the blandness of the soup. You eat, standing, already pulling out tools for mending nets, already planning the next trip to the shore, already counting how much firewood remains stacked. By mid-morning, your hands are busy tying knots, patching worn spots in the net your husband swears he fixed. You pull apart a tangled fishing line, slice new hooks from bits of bone, stir the stew with your elbow while your fingers keep twisting fiber into strength. The youngest climbs into your lap, sticky with fish oil, babbling about dreams of raiding. Like his father, you listen, but your mind is elsewhere. The tides, the traps, the winter creeping closer. The day unfolds in relentless rhythm. The men gather by the boats, debating repairs and boasting of distant conquests. You gather wood, dragging heavy branches back to the longhouse, your arms straining against the load. You smoke the morning catch, feeding the fire with just enough fuel to dry the flesh without burning it. You grind herbs for winter illnesses, mend the goat pen before another escapes, and haul buckets of water to fill the troughs. Your world is small, but demanding every corner of it shaped by your labor. You patch the roof before the next storm, sew new wool linings for the children's tunics, sharpen the knife that will slice tomorrow's fish, and sweep the earthen floor until it's more dirt than muck. Lunch is more stew, bread so dense it could double as a weapon, and the last of the stored cheese. You chew quickly, drinking weak ale that tastes like sour relief, and listen to your husband talk of distant seas he'll never sail and battles he'll never fight. You don't argue. You don't correct. You just keep moving, Because talk doesn't fill stomachs or mend nets. The afternoon drags you back to the water. Checking traps again, your hands numb from the icy shallows. Another small catch. You haul it back without complaint, knowing it keeps the hunger at bay for one more day. Evening falls heavy, pressing down on tired limbs. You serve dinner with the same quiet determination, portioning out what you can, saving what little is left for tomorrow. The children complain but eat. Your husband grumbles but fills his belly. You, the invisible force holding them together, sit near the fire, your bones weary but your heart unbroken. Night descends with a hush. The longhouse breathes a little easier, full bellies making for quieter tongues. The children collapse into sleep, dreams taking them to lands where food is plenty and toil is light. Your husband snores before the fire burns low. You do the final rounds, latching the door, banking the fire, checking the stored food one last time. The world outside howls with wind, but within your walls, there is order, there is survival, because of you. You sit alone by the fading glow, your hands raw, your spirit bruised but unbeaten. The sagas will not carve your name, the bards will not sing of your victories, but your people will wake tomorrow with food in their bellies, warmth at their backs, and hope on their lips, because you made it so. You, the Viking fisherwoman, rise not for glory, but for survival, not for songs, but for life. In the quiet hush of the longhouse, you remind yourself, this is strength, this is triumph, this is the real heart of the North, and tomorrow you will rise again. Dawn doesn't arrive gently, it comes with a kick to your ribs, small, bare feet of your youngest, twisted into your side, tangled in the wool blanket that no longer holds warmth. Your back throbs, your hips ache, and your eyelids peel open, not because you are rested, but because the world outside demands you exist again. You, the Viking fisherwoman, do not get to sleep until you are full. You do not wake up when you wish. You wake because survival taps on your ribs and pulls at your hair and tells you the day is already halfway gone. The longhouse breathes, the same way it always does, stale and heavy. Smoke clings to the beams above you, your husband sprawled across the furs like an aging ox, his snoring more impressive than anything he's caught in days. You blink at the low-burning embers, your throat dry, your belly empty, and your hands already remembering the tasks before you. The wind has changed. You can hear it whistle through the gaps in the timber walls, pushing at the shutters, howling, low and long. The storm they spoke of at the evening fire is coming. The sea will turn restless today, waves clawing at the shoreline like wolves hungry for weaklings. You stand anyway, because it does not matter if the sea snarls or the sky cracks. Bellies need filling, nets need tending, children need to be raised strong enough to live another day. Your fingers gather your cloak, your boots, the same patched tunic worn too many days in a row. The hearth needs feeding before the storm snatches it. You crouch, blow into the orange glow, and coax flame from embers. Sparks crackle. The warmth bites back at the cold, creeping through the door. A small victory. Before a day of small victories strung together with sweat and sore bones. The children rouse themselves slowly, whining into their fists, curling tighter into their furs, pretending that if they stay still enough, the chores will skip them. You yank the furs away, your voice firm, your foot nudging them into the world. They rise, limbs gangly and movements slow, but they know better than to test your patience when the sky already speaks of trouble. The morning meal is bleak, dried fish, tough as leather, boiled quickly with the last handful of onion bulbs. Bread, so dry it needs soaking before teeth can crack through it. You eat standing, watching your husband gulp down 2 portions before scratching at his beard and mumbling about fixing boat timbers he should have mended days ago. You do not answer. You are counting bundles of firewood left in the shed, fish, smoked in the rafters, pickled roots in the clay jars. Enough to stretch another week, perhaps 2. If the storm does not strip the coastline clean, you brace yourself against the wind as you step outside. It cuts straight through wool and skin, tugging at your braid, making your eyes squint in water. You secure your cloak tighter, fingers stiff but stubborn, and march toward the traps set by the tidal pools. The ground beneath your boots is half frozen, crunching beneath every step. The sea thrashes louder, already angry, already tasting. The edge of the coming storm. The traps are half submerged, tangled with seaweed and debris. You squat beside them, fingers nimble despite the bite of cold, pulling ropes, untangling knots, and dragging baskets onto shore. The catch is meager. 2 fish, a crab missing a claw, and a tangle of kelp that will serve more as goat fodder than human food. Your jaw tightens, but you keep moving. Hunger cannot be negotiated with. You load your basket and press inland. The woods offer little in the freezing winds. But you search anyway, foraging for the roots that stay hidden beneath the frost, for pine needles to boil for strength, for bark that might ease the cough building in your youngest's chest. The branches scratch at your arms. The ground is cruel beneath your knees. But your basket gains weight, and your mind gains calm, knowing you are preparing for the long storm days ahead. By midday, you return, your arms stretched from the weight, your bones sore from the cold. You do not complain. Complaints don't boil stew, don't mend clothes, don't patch holes in roofs. The longhouse is loud, your husband trying to bind planks with tooth and rope, the children squabbling over the dullest knife, the dog barking at shadows it cannot catch. You bark louder, children scatter, order returns. The afternoon is spent sealing the house against the wind. You pack moss into gaps, weigh down the thatched roof with stones dragged from the shore, pull in the goats, and secure the chickens in their pitiful coop. Your husband climbs the roof, cursing at the sky, while you hold the ladder steady, eyes sharp for the first spit of rain. By the time the clouds bleed gray into black, you've earned every new bruise and scrape lining your skin. Inside, you set the stew to simmer, drop in the fresh fish. Shred greens into the pot, and crush dried herbs between your fingers to keep the rot away. The children gnaw on bread crusts, too hungry to complain, too tired to fight. Your husband nurses a half mug of mead, already speaking of dreams that will never leave the shore. When the storm arrives, it howls through the timbers like a spirit unleashed. The shutters rattle. The door pushes against its hinges. You move, swiftly feeding the hearth, securing the food stores, laying extra furs atop the little ones who blink up at you with wide, unsure eyes. The wind screams, but your house holds. The fire burns. You, like the storm, do not break. Dinner is hot, for once, and your stomach sighs in relief as the stew fills you. Around the fire, the family huddles close, lulled by warmth, silenced by the storm's rage. Your husband's stories slurred together, half boasts, half promises. But your ears focus on the roof above you, counting drips, measuring the sturdiness of your repairs. When the meal ends, you clean what little there is to clean, your hands moving. On habit, your muscles aching for rest. The wind presses harder, the sea pounds the distant rocks, but your longhouse stands tall, because you, the woman of sea and soil, made it so. Night comes with a roar, but you are the quiet within it. Your body heavy, your spirit solid. You stare into the flames, knowing tomorrow will bring broken fences, ruined traps, and the endless cycle of rebuilding. You do not fear it. You have battled waves, winds, and men too stubborn to change. You have survived before. You will survive. Again, no skald will carve your name into stone. No songs will echo your triumph. But your children will wake to a roof overhead. Your husband will wake to food in his bowl. And your house will stand defiant against the storm. This is your legend, sung but lived, not glorified but endured. Tomorrow, you will rise, rebuild, and fight the wind again, because you are the unbroken shield of your home, the quiet warrior against the wild, and you, the Viking fisherwoman, will always prevail. Morning returns, but the storm has not left. You wake to the wind rattling the beams above your head, to the whistle of air sneaking through the smallest gaps you thought you'd sealed. You, the Viking fisherwoman, opened your eyes before your body is ready, because that is your way. There is no gentle waking when life demands strength before sunrise. You flex your fingers, raw and cracked from yesterday's work, feeling the stiff ache crawl up your wrists. The air inside the longhouse is heavy, smoky, thick with the sharp scent of wet wool and salted fish, the perfume of survival itself. Around you, the world stirs slowly. Children snuggle deeper into the animal skins, your youngest drooling into the furs, your eldest tossing beneath a patched wool blanket that fails to cover his feet. Your husband's snores still fill the corners of the house, loud and constant, muffled only by the angry breath of wind pressing against your door. You shift, muscles reluctant, spine stiff, but there is no luxury of comfort. The fire is nothing more than embers, and you know before you even step out from your bedding today will be another battle. You kneel by the hearth, drawing breath into cold lungs, coaxing life back into flame. The coals fight you, damp from the creeping cold, but you persist. Hands working like they always, relentless, hardened, certain. A curl of smoke, a flicker of light, and slowly, the flames wake just as you have. Victory, small and quiet, but necessary. Outside, the storm rumbles like a restless giant. You hear the distant crashing of waves, the hiss of wind tearing through the trees. The longhouse holds firm beneath the weight of nature's wrath, because you made it so, because yesterday you labored when others sat. You wrap yourself in your cloak, wool damp from the night's breath, and brace yourself for the day. Breakfast is grim cold broth. Hard bread softened in hot water, scraps of fish saved from the last smoke. The children grumble, but eat. Your husband mutters about needing better meat and stronger ropes, but you ignore it. You watch the stew pot stirring with one hand, already planning the repairs to be done before the next gale finds you unprepared. The door creaks as you open it, wind slapping your cheeks red. You squint through gray mist and driving rain. The world outside is chaos, the shore littered with debris, the yard a churned-up sea of mud and shattered branches. The traps are gone, you can tell from here, the absence of their familiar humps. In the water, ripped away by a sea that gives no apologies, you walk anyway. Boots sinking deep into the cold sludge, every step a struggle. The sea roars to your left, frothing against the jagged coastline, its power both mesmerizing and merciless. You trudge towards where the traps once stood, finding only broken sticks and scattered netting tangled in seaweed. Your shoulders sag, but your jaw tightens. There's no room for mourning losses when mouths are hungry. You gather what you can: driftwood, salvageable rope, pieces of the net that haven't been devoured by the waves. The wind pushes against you, cold biting through your cloak, but you fight back, feet planted firm, body bending but never breaking. You move inland, toward the woods, where the trees moan and sway under the storm's anger. The ground is slick beneath your boots, the air thick with dampness. But your basket is empty and will not stay that way. You scavenge, like you always do, pulling up stubborn roots that cling to the earth, snapping dead branches for firewood, gathering pine cones and needles to dry later. There is no bounty in these woods today, only survival's barest offering, but your fingers work quickly, your muscles remembering their strength. Your heart steady, despite the storm. By midday, your basket is heavier, your body more so. You march back, the longhouse, a welcome sight against the gray sky. Inside, it is loud children arguing, your husband grumbling, the dog barking at nothing and everything. You step in, shedding your wet cloak, dripping mud onto the floor you swept only yesterday. You feed the hearth, feed the stew pot, feed the stubbornness inside you that refuses to yield. The afternoon is no quieter. You repair what you can, mending baskets by the fire, stitching new netting from salvaged rope, drying roots near the heat while smoke stings your eyes. Your husband sits nearby, attempting to carve a new spear, telling tales of glory that have more wind than truth. The children help where they must, gathering, kindling, checking the roof, feeding the livestock that huddle together in the lean-to. Outside, you work silently, fingers flying through fiber and wood, your thoughts measuring the supplies left in the corner, counting how many days you can stretch this thin survival. You eat again as the sky darkens: more stew, more bread, more fish that tastes like salt and effort. You watch the children eat with hungry mouths and tired faces. You watch your husband eat more than his share, as always. You swallow your own portion quickly, your stomach still gnawing, your thoughts already leaping toward tomorrow, when night presses in. The storm still hurls itself against your home, but you do not flinch. You check the door, the roof, the stores, your mind ticking off every small task that keeps this house standing. You settle by the hearth, mending until your eyes blur, stirring the fire until it burns steady, tucking the children in with promises you hope you can keep. They sleep, their small bodies warm, their bellies full enough for now, because you carved comfort from a world that wished to starve them. Your husband's snores rise again, loud and thoughtless, but you pay no mind. Your fingers trace the edge of the net in your lap, your muscles throbbing, your chest tight from the weight of another day survived. No one will write your saga, no skald will chant your name by firelight, but your strength echoes louder than the storm. Your labor stands taller than any boastful tale. Tomorrow, you will rise again. You will fix what breaks, gather what remains, and mend what frays. You are the shield of your family, the fire that refuses to be extinguished. In a world of wind and waves, you, the Viking fisherwoman, are the quiet power that holds the storm at bay. And you will hold it again, and again, and again. Morning returns, but the world outside is quiet in the wrong way. Not the peace of still waters or calm skies, but the heavy, suffocating silence that comes after battle. You, the Viking fisherwoman, wake beneath the thatched roof you patched. With your own hands, your ribs sore, your arms stiff, your fingers already curling around invisible nets in your dreams. The storm has passed, but it has taken things with it. You do not need to open the door to know this. You feel it in the weight of the air, in the shift of the walls, in the absence of wind howling through the beams. The embers are faint in the hearth, barely clinging to life. You kneel, coax them back to flame like waking an old friend who needs reminding there is still purpose in burning. The children stir, bundled beneath furs, hair tangled, bellies grumbling even before their eyes open. Your husband stretches, scratches his chest, mumbles about checking the boat, as if that boat was not nearly split in half when you saw it last. You answer with a grunt, the only language anyone listens to before sunrise. Your boots find the floor, toes cold, soles stiff from yesterday's wet. The cloak you pull on is still damp, wool smelling of sea and smoke. There is no dry today, only varying degrees of wetness, and a question that follows every breath: what did the storm leave behind? The stew is thin this morning, a watery mixture of dried fish and roots boiled down to bare nourishment. You do not linger over it. The day's work is waning, and every second seated is a second wasted. You finish, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, and step into the aftermath. The door pushes open into a world scattered and broken. Branches litter the yard like fallen spears. Mud swallows the path to the shore. Your eyes move quickly, counting. What remains the roof mostly holds. The fences mostly stand, but your heart tightens as you glance toward the water's edge. Nets gone, traps destroyed. The small pier splintered into jagged stumps. The sea has claimed its tax, and you must pay it back. You do not curse. You do not cry. You begin walking, boots sinking into soft earth, body bending to pick up scattered planks, broken rope, fragments of what was whole. Every step forward is heavy, every breath tight, but your hands move, your mind calculates, your spirit stays steady. You have rebuilt before. You will rebuild again at the shoreline. You find pieces of the traps lodged between rocks, ropes tangled with seaweed, a few drifted fish snagged in the wreckage. Not much, but enough to gather. You load your basket, every small salvage feeling like a victory carved from defeat. The sea hisses at your feet, foam licking your boots, but you stare back with narrowed eyes. You are not finished. The hours pass in toil. You mend the fence first, dragging fallen branches to brace the walls, stacking stones to seal gaps where the wind tore through. The goats bleat behind you, restless but alive, noses sniffing at the salty air. Your husband drags the battered boat higher onto the shore, cursing at the splintered wood, wondering aloud if it will ever sail again. You do not answer. You are counting how many fishing trips you will lose before it is fixed. How many days the children will gnaw on dry bread while waiting for meat that may not come. By midday, your hands throb, blisters split open beneath old calluses, arms streaked with mud and sweat. You rest only long enough to chew on a hard crust, to sip water from a clay cup, before moving to the next task. The traps must be remade. You gather fresh branches, strip bark, twist twine from last season's fibers saved in the corner of the longhouse. The children help where they can, small hands learning the weight of survival, learning the patience of fingers twisting rope, learning that food does not come without work. The afternoon sun breaks through the clouds, weak and pale but welcome. You feel it on your face, closing your eyes for a brief moment, letting warmth replace the wind's bite. The world is broken, but it is not dead. And as long as it breathes, you will push forward. You patrol the woods after the traps are set, eyes sharp for roots left untouched by the storm. You dig carefully, fingers brushing away mud, pulling stubborn life from the ground. Wild onions, late berries clinging to branches, a few edible green small comforts, but every leaf matters. You fill your basket, shoulders sagging from the weight, legs dragging through muck and tangled grass. You return to the longhouse as the light fades, greeted by the sounds of the hearth crackling. Children's laughter, your husband boasting about how quickly he will patch the boat. Lies, but you let them stand. You are too tired for truth tonight. Dinner is humble stew made from the saved fish. Roots boiled to softness, a sliver of goat cheese hoarded from before the storm. The children eat with eagerness, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with the resilience only youth knows. Your husband eats quietly, his gaze lingering on the battered boat through the open shutters. You eat last, scraping your bowl clean, not for taste, but for strength. The wind has calmed when night falls, the stars peeking through thin clouds. The sea whispers rather than roars, its hunger sated for now. You sit by the hearth, hands too sore to sew, body too stiff to work further. The children sleep quickly, tangled together beneath furs, breath soft and steady. Your husband slumps. In the corner, a half-carved or slipping from his hand. Snores beginning to fill the room. You stare at the flames, feeling their warmth kiss your cheeks, feeling your heartbeat slow. You survived the storm. You salvaged what you could. You started again, because that is what you do. No songs will rise to your name. No sagas will etch your battles into memory. But tomorrow, you will wake, rebuild another net, gather another root, and push your family through another day. You, the Viking fisherwoman, will endure, because your strength is not in the songs sung by others, is in the silent work of hands that refuse to stop, in the steady heart that refuses to falter, in the quiet courage that rebuilds from ruin. The storm has ended, but your battle continues, and you will win it day after day, tide after tide, because you always have. The morning returns with a hush, the kind that makes you uneasy. You, the Viking fisherwoman, wake beneath your patched roof, and immediately listen not for the roar of wind or the crash of waves, but for that strange, unsettling quiet that only arrives after days of chaos. You blink the sleep from your eyes, fingers curling around the worn wool of your cloak. Your back stiff from a night spent curled near the hearth, from a lifetime spent in a body that has never known softness. The longhouse is cold. The fire has shrunk to coals again, but this time you are quicker. Your hands moved by memory, feeding the embers dried slivers of wood, whispering life back into the flame. It flares, crackles, spreads heat into the bones of the house. Around you, the rhythm of living stirs, children groaning into the furs. Small legs kicking free, your husband mumbling nonsense in his sleep, turning from one side to the other, like a sluggish oxen dreaming of easier fields. You rise before them all, because you always do. Your feet are bare against the chilled floor. Your muscles complain in places you stopped noticing years ago. The stew pot hangs heavy, the remains of last night's meal thickening into a paste at the bottom. You scoop it up, stretch it thin with water, add a pinch of dried herbs from the stores you keep tucked behind the hearth. It will be enough to silence hunger for a few hours, and that will have to do. When you step outside, the world is recovering. The sea rolls in soft waves, no longer snarling at the shore. The wind is a playful breeze, stirring your hair, smelling faintly of salt in distant forests. You pull your cloak tighter and glance toward the traps you reset yesterday, wondering if the sea has decided to grant you a favor. Down the narrow, muddy path you walk, each footstep sinking into damp earth, each breath filling your lungs with the sharp sting of cold air. The children's chatter floats from the longhouse behind you, their giggles and complaints already marking the day's beginning. You ignore it, gaze fixed on the water ahead, on the scattered rocks that cradle your fragile traps, on the lapping tide that holds your morning's fortune. You reach the traps and kneel, fingers quick and sure, eyes sharp. Fish, trapped between woven branches, flopping, twisting life. Not plenty, not bounty, but enough. Enough to fill the stew pot with something fresh. Enough to soften your husband's grumbles. Enough to hush the children's hunger. You work, swiftly, unbinding, resetting, casting your gaze to the horizon, where the sea stretches vast and unknowable, where storms gather beyond sight, where every meal must be earned again tomorrow. You sling your catch over your back, the woven basket, biting into your shoulders, the weight pressing but not breaking. The journey back is uphill, your boots caked in thick mud, your breath steady, your mind already moving to the tasks ahead, gutting, cleaning, salting, mending the broken net in the corner, boiling roots before they rot, checking the goats before they wander. The list is endless, but the day has begun, and that is victory enough. Inside, the children greet you with eager hands, bright eyes. Your eldest helps with the fire, your youngest tugs at your sleeve, pointing at the fish, demanding stories of the sea's generosity. Your husband sits, sharpening his knife, nodding in approval, but not offering help. You do not expect it. You never have. The morning passes in a blur of preparation. The knife in your hand dances through fish flesh, separating bone from meat, fingers moving fast to salt what must be preserved, to stew what must be eaten. The children scurry about, fetching wood, filling buckets, learning through doing, because in your world, there is no other way. Your husband takes the boat down to the waterline, testing its patches, testing his luck, and you hope the sea shows mercy. By midday, the stew pot bubbles, the air rich with the smell of fresh fish and herbs. The longhouse hums with life, the fire crackling, the children bickering, your hands never still. You eat quickly, spooning hot broth into your mouth, letting it soothe the emptiness inside you, letting it replace exhaustion with a small comfort that will carry you through the next hours. The afternoon belongs to the forest. You gather your basket again, this time headed inland, through moss-covered trees and muddy trails. You search for mushrooms in the shadowed damp, for nuts that may have escaped the storm, for berries clinging stubbornly to late-season branches. You find little, but enough. Always enough. Your muscles burn by the time you return, your arms loaded, your back aching, your throat dry. The sky is softening, blue deepening to gray, the promise of night approaching. There is no rest yet. You tend to the goats, check the roof beams, restack the woodpile, throw the worst of the storm-drenched straw into the midden heap. Your husband brings back a string of fish, a decent catch. You smile, short and quiet, before turning back to your tasks. Evening arrives with its own rhythm. Stew thickens over the fire, the children's laughter dims two tired giggles. Your husband's voice drones on about repairs and distant plans. You listen without really hearing, your fingers working through broken netting, your body swaying gently near the fire, your soul worn but strong. After dinner, you tend to the hearth, adding logs to carry warmth through the night. You wash your hands, calloused and blistered, in cold water, scrubbing away the grime of the day, but knowing the ache will remain. The children settle into their furs, warm and fed, their small bodies curling into sleep with the peace only the young know. The wind picks up again outside, but not with anger. You listen to it whistle softly through the cracks, to the waves lapping rhythmically at the shore, to the wood creaking above you. You pull your cloak tighter, glance around your longhouse, the fortress you built with your own hands, the shelter that keeps your family whole. Tomorrow will come, with more nets to mend, more fish to catch, more roots to pull, more storms to withstand. The sea will demand more, the land will demand more, your family will need more, and you will rise before them all, face the day with your quiet determination. Your tireless hands, your unbreakable will. Don't know songs will be sung of your name. No skalds will speak of your daily victories. But here, in this longhouse, by this sea, among these woods, you are the shield that guards against hunger, the fire that pushes back the cold, the strength that holds this life together. You, the Viking fisherwoman, will wake again tomorrow. and you will endure, because that is what you do. The final morning arrives without fanfare. No storm howls at the window slats. No violent waves batter the coastline. Just a sky turning softly from ash to pale gold, and you, the Viking fisherwoman, rising from your worn bedding before the first child stirs. Your bones creak, but your stride remains steady. Your life has been a tapestry woven from long days and longer nights. But today, there is something different in the air stillness, not of fear, but of peace earned through struggle. Your hands move with practiced ease. You stoke the fire, stirring yesterday's embers back to life. You wrap your shoulders in your thickest cloak, pull on boots that have walked these same paths for seasons uncounted. Your husband mumbles in his sleep. Your children curl tighter under the furs. You give them a moment longer. This morning, the quiet feels like a gift. When you step outside, the sea welcomes you with gentleness. Its rolling waves glitter beneath the rising sun. The traps you mended hold fast along the shore. The boat your husband patched rests afloat, bobbing like a promise finally kept. The sky is clear, the wind mild, the earth beneath your boots firm. The world, for once, feels whole. You walk along the shoreline, your basket light in your grip, your gaze sweeping over the familiar landscape. Every rock, every bend in the shore carries memory. Here, you first taught your eldest to tie a net. There, your youngest fell chasing a crab, giggling through the mud. Beneath that tall pine, you once rested after a storm. Your heart heavy, but your will unbroken. You check your traps, not a bounty, but enough. Enough for a feast, enough for trading, enough to remind you that the sea is a fickle giver, but it gives all the same. You gather the fish, their silver bodies glinting in the sunlight, and sling them over your shoulder, feeling their comforting weight back at the longhouse. The day unfolds in its familiar rhythm, but the burden feels lighter. Your children help without prodding, their small hands skilled from watching you all these years. Your husband repairs the fence without complaint, his voice softer, his shoulders less burdened by failed hunts and broken wood. You cook with care, seasoning the stew with extra herbs, sharing stories by the fire as the scent of fresh fish fills the room. The neighbors come to trade by midday, a pouch of berries for a woven basket, a hunk of goat cheese for a bundle of herbs. Simple exchanges, but the smiles are genuine, the voices warm. The bonds of survival have grown into friendship, respect carved through seasons of hardship. They speak of future gatherings, of boats sailing farther before winter, of peace settling over the village for the first time in many moons. In the afternoon, you walk the familiar paths one last time. You gather wild greens by the creek, pick the last of the season's berries near the old oak. You stop by the ridge overlooking the sea, the wind brushing your cheeks, your eyes tracing the endless horizon. You have fished these waters, braved their storms, fed your family through every season's cruelty. You have stitched nets with raw fingers, rebuilt your home after tempests, stood guard when winter tried to steal the life from your hearth, and through it all, you endured. The sun begins to sink, bathing the sky in amber and rose. You walk home, the weight in your basket heavier, but your steps lighter. You hear the laughter of your children before you see them, their young voices, rising like song against the quieting world. Your husband stands by the door, waving you in, the smell of hot stew reaching your nose, the glow of the hearth beckoning you home. That evening, you gather as a family around the fire, the walls of your longhouse sturdy, the roof solid above. Your head, you eat heartily, you laugh deeply. You feel the ache in your muscles, not as burden, but as proof you lived through it all. Later, as the children drift into sleep, as your husband's breathing deepens beside you, you sit by the hearth alone, watching the flames dance. Outside, the sea murmurs softly, the wind hums through the pines, the earth rests beneath the stars. You close your eyes, not with fear of tomorrow, but with pride for all the yesterdays you conquered. You, the Viking fisherwoman, carved life, from harsh waters, from stubborn land, from cold winds. You wove strength into each dawn, courage into every tide, resilience into every heartbeat. Your story may not fill the skald's songs, it may not be etched in stone or sung in great halls, but it lives in the warmth of your hearth, in the fullness of your children's bellies. in the quiet peace of your home, standing tall against the world's wildness. And that is enough, because, in your world, survival was the greatest victory of all. The wind settles, the sea rests, and so do you.